Well, hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I have now made progress on the levers, as you can see on the bench. I've done the clutch lever. There's not a lot to say about that, to be honest. So these were shot blasted, repainted in a satin black, and the bolts and the nuts were re-anodized. No, they weren't. They were zinc plated. One of these days I'll get that right. Zinc plated, and that's ready to put away in the box, ready for reassembly. The front brake master cylinder is almost complete now. Levers done, the screws and bolts and everything have all been zinc plated, not anodized, zinc plated. I think I mentioned last time that I was going to refinish the top. This has actually all been coated with a clear coat, which is petrol and oil resistant. So if I do get any leaks from this, hopefully the paint will stay intact, but time will tell, no doubt. The top, I got back the lettering and the lines by rubbing the top backwards and forwards on a sheet of wet and dry. It just so happens that the Yamaha symbol lettering and the lines are the same height, and the smaller lettering that you can see under there is at a lower height. So just by rubbing it along the sheet, it brought that back up quite nicely. That's how it was when I took it off the bike, which you can see in a previous video. These screws, these are the old ones, the ones that had to be used. We had to use the extractor to get out. It will still turn. I'll just put it in loosely now just to keep the whole thing together. So first job is we're going to change these screws. I've actually got the ones I've ordered are silver or bright zinc. They're not black, and I'll see what they look like when they go in, because this is silver. It might look okay, but I suspect they were black originally, but we'll see when we put it back in. And the other thing we need to do today is I took the sight glass out, or the level glass, because they go all misty, for want of a better word, and you can't. I did try and clean it up, but it wouldn't come up properly. It was going to ruin the look of the rest of it. So I have ordered a new one of those, and we'll be trying to fit that as well. But first of all, let's change these screws. Okay, so I've got my JS screwdriver. I'll zoom in there so we can see what's going on a little bit. There we go. Get these old ones out. Now the diaphragm in here, I guess you'd call it a diaphragm, I can't think what else you call it. I'm sure if I looked in the parts book it would tell me. Is in perfectly good condition. So I haven't changed this, and I say this was all working correctly when I test rode the bike, so I'm happy with that. So that can stay there. In fact, it's actually easier to fit it normally onto the lid, and then put the lid back on. So let's do that. So what we'll do is we'll just fit that over there, and hopefully it'll stay there when we turn it upside down, which we'll see in a minute. And somewhere I've got a packet of new screws. Here we go. Spare me while I grab a knife. I ordered 4 screws just in case. Oops. In case I do something like that and drop them and lose one. Yeah, they're the right size. That was the inside, by the way, after I'd finished shot blasting. And then this, in the last video I put this in. I didn't shot blast the inside of this, only the outside. The inside I put in some strong vinegar overnight. When I came back in the morning and scrubbed it up, put it back in the ultrasonic cleaner, and it came up pretty well. It's still marked, but there's no actual pieces or lumps or anything that's going to fall off and contaminate the brake fluid in there. So I'm pleased with that. That's absolutely fine. I will put a picture up of the vinegar that I use. You can order it online, and it's just a very strong concentration of vinegar. You say you wouldn't want to put it on your fish and chips. So let's just drop that lid back onto there. Okay, so that's fallen off. Just need to make sure, that's it just sits down in there. Sometimes if they don't go right down, you end up squashing the diaphragm, you don't get a good seal. So that seems to have gone on. So let's do these finger tight at the minute. Nothing's been done up tight at this point in time because obviously we've got to put it all back on the bike yet. Okay, let's have a look at that, see what we think of that. I quite like that. It makes it look new. Jury's out, but I think I quite like it. The only reason I don't like it is because all the other fixings are black. Maybe not. I'll leave it like that for now. I can always zinc plate these if I want to later. But yeah, I don't think it looks too bad. Okay, let's have a look at getting this sight glass or level glass in place. So the replacement level glass I've got is not OEM. In fact, I think it said it was for FG 1100, but basically it consists of an O-ring and the sight glass itself. There are some instructions on eBay on how to fit these from the seller. He suggests that the O-ring just pushes into the back of the hole. This sits on there, you get it level, and then you put something over it and you push it in. Whether it's going to be that easy, I don't know. I have, because this was all shot blasted, all of this is nice and clean in here, so I don't think we need to go any further than that. It should just be a question of pushing this into place. Famous last words. So first thing we'll do is we'll just drop this O-ring in the back there. Okay, that's nice and flush. And then let's offer this up and see what we've got. Okay. Okay, I think that'll be alright. I think what we need to do is obviously push that in further. So it has been suggested to me that you can use one of these soft jaw clamps that just for holding things, but whether that's going to be strong enough to do this, I don't know. What I'm going to do is grab a cloth, and I'm just going to put a cloth across this so I don't damage everything that I've done. I think what I might do actually, rather than try using that to start with, I'm actually just going to use this rule. See if we can't just push it in with that for a start. Oh, okay. Well, that sounded quite positive. Oh, okay. Happy days, I think. We're there. That looks like it's nice and flush. Doesn't look like it's going anywhere. I can't tell whether it's right up against the rubber O-ring, to be honest. I suppose until we fill it with fluid, we're not going to know whether it's going to leak or not. But, got to be honest, it does look the biz. So I'm happy with that. Yep. Unless you're a real rivet counter, I don't think you'd realise that was non-OEM. So I'll just give that another push just to make absolutely sure it's gone all the way in. But I did click home quite a nice sound. Yeah, I don't think that's going any further. No, I'm happy with that. Good. Let's move on to the next thing. So off camera, I've been carrying on with the restoration of various bits and pieces. And I've started on the calipers. I'll show you the rear one in a minute, which I've pretty much finished, just needs reassembling. So first thing I do is take them all apart, and in this particular instance I haven't had to remove the pistons. So these, there'll be 2 seals usually around the sides of these. These don't leak, they do work, they do move in and out. I can push them in and out with my fingers, so I'm perfectly happy that they're going to be okay. So what I did was I changed the blast media in my ballast cabinet over there, and I put soda back in and took out the glass beads. The reason for that was because I didn't want the glass beads getting into you know, these oil ways here and blocking those up. As I've said before, the advantage of soda is once you've blasted it with soda, you can put it into the electronic cleaner and the soda just dissolves, basically, because it is literally just bicarb of soda. It's not as an aggressive medium as glass beads, so the parts perhaps don't come up quite as uniform as perhaps they would do if you were using glass beads, but it's perfectly acceptable from the point of view of this being degreased, primed, painted, and then having a clear coat put over the top of oil and petrol resistant clear coat, so hopefully the paint will stay on them. So that's the caliper bodies themselves. Obviously there's 2 of those, well, so there's two halves I should say, and then there's 2 bolts holding those together, and then one just sits on top of the other one. Not that way around, it doesn't. That way around I should say. There we go. That's it. It's not easy with one hand. And it just bolts together. I've been lucky with this restoration so far. I haven't had any major issues with nuts, bolts being seized or anything like that. I think it's partly to do, although the bike's from 1987, it's only doing 14,000 miles, and I think most of these, you know, I think it's been well looked after generally, this bike. So we've got the bleed nipples out. They've come out in one go. These will get zinc plated along with everything else. These will all be bright zinc plated as well. Then we've got, if we move that out of the way for a second, we've got the rest of the fixings. So we've got these shims or anti-vibration plates, I guess, or anti-squeal plates to clean up. These long bolts, these hold the brake pads in place. They're gold anodized, gold zinc plated, so they'll get redone. These little washers sit in between the 2 halves of the caliper bodies, where they will always go. So not on that particular one, but so they basically sit there like that. One there, one there, but they sit in a recess in the other half. We'll replace all of these as we go along. These are the copper washers that go either side of the banjo union bolts. And then the only other thing we've got to contend with is these bolts, which bolt the caliper to the bike. Now these are actually chrome, and there's a very slight, I don't know if you can see that, slight amount of rust on there. It's not too bad. In actual fact, I've had some quite good luck in cleaning those up. So we'll move over to the brake discs themselves. No, they're not. Brake pads, sorry. Each of these, a fair bit of meat on them, but they're heavily contaminated. And frankly, I just don't feel like reusing them. While I've got it all apart, it'd be daft not to put new brake pads in. They don't cost a huge amount of money. in the grand scheme of things, but so all of these do actually look in pretty good condition. And then the only other thing we've got is the little rubber end that goes over the bleed nipple. I don't like these ones, they can fall off too easily. I'm going to get the ones that have got the little round bit on the bottom, so that when you flip these off, it stays attached to the rubber bit that's still on the bleed nipple, so you don't end up losing them. So I'll get some more of those. Okay, so let's have a look how far I've got with the rear brake caliper now. So this is where I've got to with the rear brake caliper. For a start, the caliper caliper body halves were shot blasted, like I showed you just now with the other ones. Pistons checked out, all okay. These are all cleaned up on the back as well. And then they were given 2 coats of primer, 2 coats of Yamaha Titanic Grey, which is apparently the correct colour for this bike and these calipers, and then 2 coats of clear coat and an oil resistant clear lacquer, clear coat, just to try and stop the paint coming off. I've been in 2 minds whether to change all the brake hoses for braided steel ones. You can get, I want this bike to look as original as possible, and you can get braided black lines now, and I think that they might even be covered in rubber or plastic, which, you know, to the untrained eye is going to look pretty authentic. All of these are in really good condition. According to what I've read, these in theory ought to have a lifetime guarantee on them, but obviously if they've had a hard life and they look badly worn in places, or start to show signs of cracking or whatever it happens to be, obviously I would be changing them. But I've checked these over, they seem absolutely fine. There may be a way of pressure testing these. I don't know whether there is or not, but I'm guessing there is. If anybody knows, please let me know in the comments, I'd appreciate that. These would have been zinc plated black. I've actually masked off the rubber and the plastic, and I've sprayed these ends. The reason I've done that is because I can't guarantee to get all the oil out of the line if I was to put this in my zinc plating tank, and I don't want to contaminate the zinc plating tank. So basically what I've done with those both ends is I've just painted those black, but again they would have been black anyway, they're just painted rather than zinc plated, so in theory they're not going to last quite as long. But having said that, this bike isn't likely to be going out in the rain anytime soon, so I'm not too worried about that. Right, the other parts, that's the shim that goes in to stop any vibration and squealing. That just cleaned up quite easily in the parts cleaner. The chrome screws came up really well actually. Really pleased with those. That I just did those on a wire wheel, and they come up really well. These were bright zinc plated, as was these, and as were the nipples as well, brake bleed nipples, and again they've come up really nicely. Really pleased with those. So that's all good. Black anodized bolt, 2 new washers ready to go. So yeah, so this is now ready for reassembly. However, best laid plans and all that, I did forget to order the new brake pads, so I can reassemble this, but we are going to have to wait for the brake pads, unfortunately. Okay, caliper reassembly time. Apologies for the noises in the background. My neighbour's having some scaffolding taken down, I think. So let's put the pipe out the way for a second. We'll start off with bolting the 2 bodies, or 2 half bodies together. So we need to be mindful of the fact that there is a sealing washer, and the purpose of that is to seal the oil way between, or brake fluid way I should say, between here and here. First thing I'm going to do is just be absolutely doubly sure. I'm just going to go and blow these out with some compressed air, just to make sure there's absolutely no chance of any foreign materials being in there. Okay, that's those all blown out. So just while I was doing that, I was just having a thought, something that might worth mentioning to you. With your pistons themselves, if you do need to get them out to change the seals, then there's a couple of ways of doing it. You could, if you were really desperate, grab this with something, pair of pliers, mole grits, whatever, and try and twist it out. But the chances are you then won't be able to use it because you'll have damaged the surface of it. If you need to get them out to change them anyway, I suppose that doesn't matter. But there is an easier way of getting them out. The way I use, and 9 times out of 10 works, is particularly if they're already split apart like this, is if you can bung up or put blind bolts in this hole and this hole, sorry, this hole I should say, or this hole, it doesn't really matter. You then get your air compressor and you put a piece of cloth around your air compressor and you put the nozzle in, and you pull the trigger on the air compressor, and the compressed air then forces this out. Quite often they'll come out at a hell of a rate, so you want to have it facing down when you do it, probably resting on a cloth, something like that, because if you don't, that will go shooting across your workshop, and could be quite dangerous. So bear that in mind. That's the second way of getting them out. The other way that some people get them out is they take the pads out, and then depending on the type of caliper you've got, sometimes there's actually enough room to then pump the brake lever, and you're actually using the hydraulic fluid, the brake fluid, to pump them out, just as you would do if you're actually operating the brakes. The only issue with that method is because your system's full of brake fluid, at that point you are going to get brake fluid go everywhere. But at the end of the day, if you've got to get them out to change them, you've got to get them out to change them somehow. So they're the 3 ways that I know about anyway. Right, so back to the reassembly. As I was saying, this little O-ring has to go in here, so we're going to keep that face down so we don't lose the O-ring out of there, and put this one on top, and then bolt them up. I always think it's a good idea when you're reassembling anything like this, particularly with the fluid ways, is just to put a bit of brake fluid on there when you're seating something like that, because you know brake fluid is not going to do any harm, because you know it's been sat in brake fluid all that time. So I'm just going to go grab some brake fluid, and we'll do that. Pour a little drop of brake fluid into there. I'm literally just going to dip my finger in there, try and keep it as clean as possible. Run that around there. That's all it needs. A little bit on the washer, and then the washer just sits in there like that. I have, as I said, put a clear coat on these which is meant to be oil resistant, but frankly I generally don't trust those sorts of things. So it's supposed to be safe than sorry, so I'm trying to keep my hands as clean as possible, at least as brake fluid free as possible. So that's the only thing that needs to go in there. This half can now sit onto this half, like so, and then we're basically bolting this up through these 2 holes using our anodite, don't know again, am I? Zinc plated screws. I've got anodizing on the brain. So that one goes in there, that one goes in there. I wonder what size that is. I'm going to get it wrong, but let's go for, I'm going to say that is 17. Miles off, 14 then. I think, where's my 14 gone? Come on, I know you're in there. There it is. Let's try that. Yeah, 14. put it in by hand, to be honest. There we go, that's our first 2 bolts in. Interestingly, in the workshop manual, it does say not to loosen these, but I think that's referring to when you changing your brake pads, because you don't need to. So there's no torque figure given for these in the manual. So what we'll do is we'll do them tight, and then when they're back on the bike, when the calipers bolted back on the bike, we'll give those a final tweak just to be absolutely sure we're happy with those. We just need to make sure that both of those surfaces, which were obviously been milled flat at some point, are completely clean when you put all this back together. I've actually just marked that now doing that. Not to worry, these things happen. I'll get touched up shortly. Okay, so then we can drop our so I'll say we haven't got any pads at the minute, and I'm going to take this apart because I've forgotten to put that in. There you go, that's because I'm talking to the camera instead of paying attention to what I'm doing. So there you go, there's one for you. If you're going to put these back together, make sure you put that back in first. So let's undo those again. Right, let's try that again, shall we? So we've got our washer in place, we've got our dab of brake fluid on there. Wipe that off my fingers now, and then we're going to put the shim in. The shim can only go one way because of this protrusion here, so if you try to put it in that way, it won't fit in. So it can only go that way, and then it sits down onto those 2 little protrusions there, like so. Okay, so that's basically how that goes. So now let's reassemble that as we just did, and this time we'll make sure that that's in place, which it is. Our 2 bolts again. I don't know. You can't trust these people who make videos on the internet. Right, just going to bolt that back up. So if all you can see is my elbow at the minute. Okay, so we're done, we're back together. Happy days. So that's all that done. We haven't got the pads, like I said, but we can just temporarily put our pad holding bolts back in place, so at least you'll have a rough idea of what this is going to look like when it's all back together. We've got our that clip goes onto this pipe. I'm not quite sure which way around it goes. I can't quite remember at the moment, but we'll just drop that over there for now. That's fine. We'll work that out and put it back on the bike. Obviously these 2 we're not going to use at the moment because they're what bolts it to the bike. We've got our bleed nipples here, which we can turn in temporarily. Oops. Okay, so apart from the banjo bolt, which we can drop on as well, just so it's all together. There we go. That is our rebuilt caliper, ready to go back on the bike, with the exception of the pads which are on order, and then it's just a question of popping out those 2 bolts, pads fitted in there, and then put those back in. So now we've got the rear caliper done. It's really just a question of repeating the process for the 2 front calipers, and they'll all be then ready to go back on the bike. So that's it for today. Not a particularly long video, but just shows you where we've got to, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next part. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up down below. Subscribe to the channel so you can see more videos that are coming along shortly. See you in the next one.